What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Week 15 Sunday night recap presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Simon, joined as always by my wildly handsome, one facial-haired, one not-so-facial-haired co-hosts, John Garofalo and Joey Wright. What's up, boys?
What up? I've learned a lot about false hope today, thanks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Joey, I walked up to Walgreens with my sister not a second ago. She was like, hey, will you walk with me? Like, it's late. And I was like, yeah, of course, I'll walk with you. And when I left, the Buccaneers were winning. And I was gone, I swear, 15 minminutes. And I come back and all of a sudden
15 minutes.
The Bengals are up by 10 points out of nowhere.
It's so infuriating.
I'm sorry. It's been a rough year as a Bucs fan, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But the good news is you're probably still going to make the playoffs. It doesn't matter because the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers teams are having even worse years.
Oh, I don't know. Panthers might steal it from you.
What the hell, Panthers? This was another upside-down week of confusing games. The NFL is still drunk in Week 15. I thought by this point in the season we would have some corrections, but Houston going neck and neck with Kansas City, Dallas losing to the Jaguars after almost losing to Houston last week. It's been a nuts week. We got some people in here ready to talk about these Week 15 games. Albert, what's up? Hello, everyone.
Albert.
Yeah.
What up, Albert? See you in the morning. See you in the evening.
See ya in the other
afternoon.
Maria.
Afternoon delight.
We got Maria in here. What's up, Maria? Welcome in.
What up, Maria?
And Master Cloud Troshi in here with the TD. Nothing but TDs
baby.
today.
Whoa.
Welcome in.
We got
Geek Hippie in here. What's up, Geek?
Hey, Geek.
What up, Geek?
And DJ said, Grim said Browns kept him around and he is moving on. Can't join tonight. He is flying home from New Orleans. Shout out, Grim. DJ, reach out to Grim and tell him, oh my God, man, how the hell are you still alive?
DJ,
all of that.
I have an issue. This is the same picture as last week. You're supposed to rotate them for me. Come on, buddy. Get with it. Let's go.
DJ's impressive with the new picture every week. He's coming in here. We got Dello in here. What's up, my friend? Welcome.
What up,
Dello?
hello.
Welcome in. Guys, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome in. We are Front Yard Fantasy. We're here every Sunday night breaking down these games on FanDuel. If you like what we're doing, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and make sure you're subscribed to FanDuel on YouTube. And then head over to TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at FanDuel on all of those platforms. They got a whole team of killer content creators as we get down the stretch of this fantasy football season, helping you guys win those leagues and win some cash as well. DJ in here said, I'm getting there. I will tweet you some. Joey, he's going to tweet you out some new pictures.
Without please do, DJ.
Doubt. Guys, before we jump into the games, we still got some 4 p.m. games going on. I wanted to talk about this Sunday night football game that we have coming up. And with all of the awesome games that were on the schedule this week, they saved the best game for Sunday night football, one where everyone's going to want to stay awake to watch the New York Giants face off against the Washington Commanders. Both of these teams, the same exact record, 7-5-1 for both of these guys. The Commanders are 4.5-point favorites at home here. Joey, before I start asking about these players, I just want to know, who do you think is going to win this game?
I'll go Giants. The Commanders, Chase Young's not back. Their defenses look good, but I just feel like the Giants pull this out.
Man, the Giants have been getting beat up against the run in recent weeks, though. But maybe this is that get right game after they started 6-1.
Yeah.
6-1. Jail. You think this is a get right game for the Giants, or are the Commanders going to roll through them?
Oh man, I think this is going to be a close game. I think we're going to get a division game. I'll take Washington on the money line.
Yeah, I think I'm taking Washington here as well. But it'll be close. It'll be close. Daniel Jones, I wanted to ask you guys about as we're going into this. It's fantasy football playoffs. A lot of people may be looking for that quarterback. Maybe they don't have a Justin Fields, a Justin Herbert, a Joe Burrow. Daniel Jones, the last time they played Washington, he ran quite a bit. I think he had over 70 rushing yards, if I remember correctly. A pretty decent game. John Luke, do you think Daniel Jones is startable for fantasy tonight in this game?
Startable, yeah. Yeah, I think he is. That, of course, in one QB leagues does not mean much. I guess in super flex leagues, it doesn't mean much. One QB leagues, I'm still willing to start him. I have him as like a QB2 this week. I think that's right where he belongs, right in that Daniel Jones zone.
The Daniel Jones zone. Joey, did Daniel Jones graduate out of the Daniel Jones zone this week for you, or is he still sitting down there as a QB2 range?
Well, he's out of the Daniel Jones zone, but he's back into the Daniel Jones zone. He's in his own zone. But you know what? I like the Giants' schedule the next 2 weeks. They've got the Vikings. Wow, what a matchup right there for Daniel Jones. And they've got the Colts, like both winnable matchups, good quarterback matchups. I wouldn't mind rolling Daniel Jones out in fantasy playoffs if I streamed quarterback, which I'm very confident to do.
I know we're not talking that game right now, but you just brought up the Vikings and Colts. And I was at a wedding yesterday. Okay, so right before the wedding starts, I look at my phone. Colts are up 23-0, and I'm like, oh, cool. And I asked my girlfriend, just jokingly, we're sitting there in the pews, who do you think's going to win? And she's like, oh, the Colts for sure. And I was like, yeah, I was just messing around. Of course they're going to win without a doubt. And then later that night at the reception, I looked at my phone and I was like, what the hell did I miss? I went back and I watched as much of that game on YouTube as I could because that was absurd. I cannot believe that happened yesterday. Unbelievable.
Totally blew it.
Saturday, what are you doing? More like Jeff Wednesday, am I right?
My oldest daughter was watching the game with me yesterday afternoon, and we fell asleep on the couch, and they were up, I think 36-3, and woke up and it was a 10-point game, and I'm like, What happened? She thought it was the greatest thing she'd ever seen.
Oh, I bet.
She loved the purple team, so she kept calling them
the purple team.
Purple team.
Yeah. We got Damon here. Well. Fancy meeting you here. Dame. Welcome in.
Fancy meeting you. See you in the morning. See you in the evening.
See you in all the time.
See you in all the time.
On the other side of the ball, on the Washington side, this Giants team has been getting beat up against opposing running backs over the last couple of weeks. They have not been able to stop the run. But this backfield for Washington has been a little bit ambiguous. It's been non-certain who you should be starting. John Luke, if you've got to start one of Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson tonight, which one are you plugging into your lineup?
I'm fine starting Brian Robinson tonight. Honestly, I'm fine starting both of these guys. Giants' run defense hasn't been that good, and they've been working both of these guys into the rotation. Probably lean Brian Robinson over Antonio Gibson, though.
Joey, are you leaning Brian Robinson as well here?
Yeah, Brian Robinson's looked good the last couple of weeks, and he's the running back of the future for this team, in my opinion. And I think that change has already started to happen now. I think Gibson will still be involved, but Brian Robinson's the running back I'd rather play.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm rolling Brian Robinson out there ahead of Antonio Gibson as well. But I do think you can start Antonio Gibson in this matchup. I think this is a week where you can plug both of those guys in. Most weeks, I think you pick your poison, right? You roll Brian Robinson out there. Antonio Gibson, probably more of a flex play or bench play, emergency start. Joey, what do you expect from Antonio Gibson? Like RB2, RB3 numbers?
Flex at best numbers from him tonight. He might get you double-digit fantasy points and make 10 points in the PPR league because he will catch the ball in the backfield. But outside of that, I'm not expecting much out of him.
That's what you're really praying for.
Yep.
Outside of the usual suspects on the Washington side, you're starting Terry McLaurin. Are there any other players, JL, that you think are even startable in this game besides Terry McLaurin, Saquon Barkley, and then the previously mentioned players? It seems like a fantasy landfill after that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm not starting Logan Thomas. I'm not starting any of the Giants pass catchers. Maybe Richie James. Probably not.
Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. Any interest for either of those players?
I'm fine starting either of those guys. They're flex players, like wide receiver 3 or more. more like wide receiver 4 or more, maybe is more likely. But and then maybe if you're interested, you might throw a little bit on Daniel Bellinger, but I don't have those kind of cojones.
Now that his eye's back in his head and he's out there.
Yeah, now that he has his eye back.
Gross.
I still can't believe that that's just his eye just fell out. We're all good on that front. Joey, how are you feeling about Jahan Dotson? He's had some big games this year. It seems to come off the back of long touchdowns. Do you think he's startable?
This year I'm a little hesitant to start him unless I absolutely need to. He's somebody I definitely want in dynasty though. So if you're in dynasty leagues, a lot of those dynasty leagues are still trading right now. So let's say Dotson puts up a dud tonight, go out there and trade for him. See what you would have to give up to get him, because I think he's going to be great once Washington gets a competent quarterback.
Man, these rookie wide receivers this year, I feel like there's just so many that we're going to be talking about going into next season that have shown us flashes or have had incredible seasons. Jahan Dotson, David Bell, another one who we've seen little bits from, but maybe haven't blown up onto the scene all the way, where it'll be interesting to see where these guys get drafted going into next season, because Dotson has shown us that he's a talented player out there. Before we move on from this game, anything else either of you guys wanted to bring up? I really wish we had a better Sunday Night Football matchup.
Yeah, I do too. I said to my wife this one, I always look to see what the Sunday night game is, and I walked up to her, I'm like, honey, you've done a lot this last couple weeks. I'm gonna put the kids to bed tonight. And she's like, game sucks tonight. And I'm like, yep.
Checks out. Guys, we're going to move on from this game and start talking about the games that happened already today. First up, that Philly-Chicago game. The Eagles coming out on top 25-20 in this one.
Yeah, Philadelphia Eagles win 25-20 to improve to a league best 13-1. Was it Flybirds? Is that what they say? Fly, Eagle, fly? Something like that. I think they say JETS. Call. If I'm not mistaken. They hit us in the YouTube chat all the time with it. Jay Wall's going to kill me because it's Fly Eagles Fly. That's what it is.
There you go.
I think that's right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
It also sounds very whimsical, like way more whimsical now that you say it that way. Like I thought it was cool before, but now I don't know.
Nah, now it's like really lame because like man just said it.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
It's like whenever Hillary Clinton filmed herself going, "It's just me chilling in Cedar Rapids," and then all of a sudden that was dead. No one ever dead.
Chilling was dead.
Eagles quarterback sneaked their way into victory. And this one is Jalen Hurts pushed 3 touchdowns across the goal line in this contest. Jalen Hurts started off shaky with 2 interceptions, but found his footing by the beginning of the second half, finishing with 315 yards passing, 61 yards rushing, with 3 aforementioned rushing touchdowns. You got to plan for that. It's QB sneak every time with Jalen Hurts on the 1-yard line. He's now second in the league in rushing touchdowns, regardless of position. So Jalen Hurts is having a great season. So guys, next year, 2023 Superflex Dynasty drafts, not Dynasty, just 2023 fantasy drafts. You're sitting there, you've got the 101. Is Jalen Hurts now your number 1 pick?
Probably, yeah.
It's close between him and Josh Allen, but I think it is Jalen Hurts. We've seen what they like to do with him. 3 rushing touchdowns. Not many quarterbacks have that as a possibility even in their games. And with Jalen Hurts, I'm not even surprised seeing that on the stat line. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, cool. Jalen Hurts had a good game. Not like, holy cow, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. He's got to be up there.
17 attempts. It's absurd. Absurd for a running back. Yeah, he's the one for me.
Yeah. What's great about him is he can win anyway in these games. It's been really wonderful to watch this year. I kind of mentioned earlier that he was a player that I was kind of down on in the preseason a little bit, and then I put out a quarterback rankings and got just completely roasted. But it was good because it actually made me go back and look. It's like, okay, am I wrong on this? And luckily I did make an adjustment, and I was wrong because Hurts is the real deal.
He's the dude.
Yeah. AJ Brown, another real deal, 9 receptions, 181 receiving yards. He's now 5th in the league in receiving yardage on the season. Devonta Smith, 6th straight game with at least 8 targets. He finished today with 5 receptions for 126 yards. What was that?
He looked good.
Oh, God. Yeah, I've been really loving what I'm seeing out of Devonta Smith, and I think a lot of it has to do with Dallas Goedert not being there. Do you guys feel that way too? Is it a product of Goedert?
Certainly helps, yeah.
Yeah. This is what we love to see for fantasy. I mean, just look at the receiving section of this box score down here, right? Mm-hmm. The targets are so heavily consolidated, and the like the yardage this week is almost comical with how consolidated it is. Nobody else has over even 10 receiving yards, and these two guys both over 125. Like it makes it easy for fantasy. You start Jalen Hurts and you start AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, and then you don't have to worry about anything else.
It feels like Madden stat lines. The only disappointing factor from the Eagles today was pretty much Miles Sanders. 11 carries for 42 yards. With the season he's been having, we've been seeing a lot better games from him, but this week is a little disappointing. On the Bears side of the ball, Justin Fields gave us a scare as he headed into the locker room towards the middle of the fourth quarter, but he did return to the field, scored a touchdown on that drive. Bears did come up short, though, sadly. Fields finished with 152 yards passing with 2 touchdowns and 15 carries for 95 yards, so he does seem like a cheat code. Loving everything we're seeing out of Fields this year. For me, he's a top 10 quarterback going into next year. David Montgomery, great day, 91 scrimmage yards, 2 touchdowns. Montgomery put together a nice run of games in the last 4 weeks, averaging a touchdown and 98 scrimmage yards per game. So, guys, with Khalil Herbert due back from the IR next week, are you concerned with David Montgomery sustaining this type of usage? Or do you think the Bears ride him until the wheels fall off, since he will be a free agent heading into next year?
I think the Bears continue to ride him, right? We've seen it time and time again. I don't know if this is the point Simon was about to make.
100%.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert coming back. They just don't view him that way, and that's fine. That you might see some more of Khalil Herbert getting thrown into the mix here, but it's still David Montgomery's backfield.
Yeah, when Khalil Herbert stood in relief for David Montgomery, whenever David Montgomery was out injured, everybody thought, okay, this is the passing of the torch because Khalil Herbert looks incredible. At very worst, or at very best, it'll be a split, a 1A, 1B scenario. And JL, like you said, David Montgomery came back from injury, immediately was the lead back again, the workhorse back for this team. I'm not too worried, especially now that it's flipped and Herbert's the one coming back from injury. And Montgomery's looked good. So I expect him to keep being the main back here.
I'm hoping, because I really like Khalil Herbert for next year, and I don't want to see him get re-injured when they could just shut him down for the season. The Bears aren't really playing for anything. So the one bad thing about the Bears, though, they are lacking a true wide receiver one right now on their team. Today, Cole Kmet led the team in targets with 5, and Byron Pringle led the team in yardage with 39 yards on 2 receptions.
Of course.
So there's not much receiving options here for the Bears, but Justin Fields somehow still gets it done.
Do you think if they get a receiver in here, you asked about Jalen Hurts if he was the number 1 quarterback, would you be shocked to have someone rank Justin Fields as their number 1 quarterback in redraft going into next year with the rush? He's one of the only quarterbacks that can rush for 90 plus yards in a game, and it's not shocking. This dude is special when he's running the ball.
If I believed that, let's say that I just believe Justin Fields is the best quarterback in the league, and let's say they go out and they get like DJ Moore. We talked about that this morning, that's the kind of caliber wide receiver you'd want to see them get. I would trade my 101 out to get the 103 and take Fields, because I don't think Justin Fields has done enough to prove that he is the de facto 101, because Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, they still have that performance on the field that we've seen a better resume, basically.
Yeah,
we've seen it. We can believe it a lot easier than what we've seen from Fields. But listen, I believe it from Fields. I'd be happy to have either Hurts or Fields captaining my team next year for sure.
Yeah, the reason that I moved Hurts up to that 101 spot is because not only has he performed really well this past season, but we've seen it also before in a previous season. So this is now 2 seasons that we've seen Jalen Hurts start to really perform for fantasy purposes. And then on top of that, I think his situation is only going to get better because that Eagles team is so they have so much leverage. They have so much leverage. Just keep building up the team, a good offense around Jalen Hurts. And I feel like Justin Fields, it's still going to take time. They don't have a ton of leverage, that Chicago Bears team. And so they have to build up to that. So I think there's more evidence really behind Jalen Hurts than someone putting Justin Fields in there. But absolutely. I also don't think they're crazy if they do that. I think it is close enough that it's within the realm of possibility.
That's the point I was making there, is that Justin Fields, I'm not putting him at 1, but I think he's in tier 1. I think he is a tier 1 quarterback for me going into next year, up there with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Here's a question: Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields next season? Justin Fields is outperforming him on a point per game basis this year. Where would you be rolling next year? I think the answer is going to be Lamar, but I think it's a question. Which one of these guys would you prefer?
Still Lamar for me. It's of course remains to be seen what his situation turns into.
I think I'm going Fields. Maybe I'm in love. Maybe I'm was it drunken love? But just he looks so great, and we've seen it from Lamar in the past too. But man, we'll see.
That's around where that line is for me. I don't know which one I'll prefer next year, but it's crazy that we're even having this conversation.
Has Tua moved into that tiers with you?
Tua's up there. Tua's up there as well. Jay in here saying, look at these handsome gentlemen. What's up, Jay? Welcome in, my friend. And Caden, the Colts fan, had a question for us. Caden, first of all, so sorry, man. What a rough way to experience history yesterday. 31 other fan bases had a great time. I'm so sorry. But he said Daniel Jones or Aaron Rodgers need 15 for the win. So let's help Caden get that win to make up for that loss yesterday. I'm rolling Daniel Jones out there with the rushing ability. He ran all over Washington last time they played, and I just feel a little bit more comfortable with that floor from him. What about you, Joey?
I have Aaron Rodgers ranked higher. I feel like Aaron Rodgers is a lot safer to get 15 points for you. 2 touchdowns, and pretty much Rodgers is there in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues with the yardage thrown in. I would go Aaron Rodgers, but I don't have a problem with either of these guys. I think he'll get 15 points out of either of them.
Yeah, I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers as well. With no Aaron Donald, I think that Rams defense is hobbling a bit, and Aaron Rodgers is much more talented than Daniel Jones, in my opinion.
We got Albert in here saying Raiders Patriots going to overtime, potentially tied up right now. 30 seconds left. I know New England has the ball.
Also, the Bengals scored again, Joey.
No. Also, we got Dave in here saying football re-stole my heart today with the incredibly fun games. Yeah, I think it stole Joey's heart and gave it to you is what happened with football today, Dave.
It re-stole my heart last night watching that Buffalo Bills Miami Dolphins game. That was just the most delightful game to watch.
It was fun. You enjoyed that one?
So fun. Yes, just snowing, snowballs everywhere.
Also, something about that matchup is
right.
So
it was
fun
electric.
Like the Bills and the Dolphins, I feel like those fan bases, they've had some rough teams, right? But historically, I've had great teams, but disappointed fan bases over the last 5 years. Now they're both fantastic teams. The Dolphins
playing on the ice level.
My God, it's just so much fun.
Playing the ice map.
Damien here said, need to see Ravens player personnel moves before answering that Lamar versus Justin Fields. I think both of these teams, they're close enough where it's really going to matter what these two teams do in the offseason for their quarterbacks down there. Let's move on to our next game here, though. The Detroit Lions and the New York Jets facing off today.
Yes, Zach Wilson makes his revenge game return. Not a revenge game. What do you call it when your own team benches you and you get to play again?
Oh, man.
Pity start?
Pity start game about right. For Zach Wilson. Vegas had this total set at 44. It hit the under, and the Detroit Lions, of course, covered because they were underdogs coming into this match by 2 points, and they covered. Did they cover all right? They won this game 20-17. Zach Wilson in his return didn't have too bad of a game. 18 completions, 35 attempts, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. 23.38 fantasy points. If you had the balls to start Zach Wilson, then props to you. Props to you this week.
I didn't.
I did not either. On the receiving side, or I'm sorry, on the rushing side, we had Zonovan Knight was the main carrier in this backfield, but didn't really do much with it. 13 carries for 23 yards.
Yeah, it was bad.
A measly 1.8 per carry. Yeah, 2.3 fantasy points. But no one really did well in this backfield for the Jets. Joey, what did you see from Zonovan Knight this week?
Not much, Bob. Zonovan Knight was somebody I was really excited for. The last 2 weeks, he's looked really well. Looks like the Jets have gained some confidence in him. And, this Detroit Lions run defense is really good. It's a little deceiving, though, because their pass defense is so bad. But if you go look back at the last 4 or 5 weeks, they're not giving them much rushing work. So while I'm sad to see this, I wasn't shocked. I did think Knight was going to have a much better game. But Michael Carter started getting receiving downs work, which we didn't see as much the last few weeks. So I'm nervous to start him going forth the rest of the season. He was someone I was really excited about. But
yeah, I think a lot of us got to this confident point with him where it's like, oh yeah, you could totally start Zonovan Knight. Get those RB2 numbers. Yeah. Simon, how you feel about Zonovan Knight? Are you starting him going into next week?
You guys finally convinced me. I was the naysayer. I was the poo-pooer on Zonovan Knight. I was like, I don't believe it. Michael Carter's coming back. They like Michael Carter. I bought into it this week, and you know what? This game doesn't change my mindset on him too much. I think he's still startable. You can expect RB2, RB3 type numbers. But if you were hoping he was a league winner type player, I don't think you're getting league winning numbers from Zonovan Knight. Something Joey brought up here, though, I think is a great point that I wanted to bring up. Whenever you're looking at just team rankings versus a position or team rushing yards, like the Lions earlier in the year were like bottom 5 in giving up rushing yards. So they looked like a plus matchup for running backs. You always got to look one level deeper. Look at the next level because they were getting torn up by rushing quarterbacks. But even at the beginning of the year, whenever they looked like a bottom 5 rushing defense, the running backs were still getting stuffed. They weren't giving up a lot of big games to these opposing running backs. So those numbers can be deceiving whenever you're looking at them right there.
Guys, I have to interrupt this conversation.
I was just about to say.
I don't even know how to describe. The Patriots just lost. The Raiders got a touchdown because the Patriots did a backwards lateral, like a toss back, and the Raiders just took it to the end zone
in regulation to avoid overtime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow. Wild. I don't know who Jones is. Oh, and
Chandler Jones.
Mac Jones just got stiff armed into the ground. Straight into the ground.
That is the amazing revenge game narrative for Chandler Jones. Former Patriots player just returned a touchdown to beat them. Wow.
That sounds so not Belichick to do something cute like that at the end of a game where you're going to go to overtime, doesn't it? Like a lateral move at the end of the game. That Belichick, I feel like, is the kind of like, let's just take it to overtime. See if we can beat them there. That's wild. Yeah,
that is insane. Wow. Then we got Scampers in here. Says shame game.
Shame
Hello.
game. What's up, Scampers?
Welcome in.
Oh, my meower's a little broken.
Yeah, a little bit scratchy there. On the receiving side of this game, guys, I'll get back to this. Garrett Wilson had a pretty decent game. 9 targets, 4 receptions, 98 yards, no touchdowns. Elijah Moore, also not bad. 7 targets, 4 receptions, 51 yards. Garrett Wilson is probably still just a must start every week in, week out. He's been so consistent over the last 4 to 6 weeks. It's been insane. CJ Uzomah got 2 touchdowns on 2 receptions and 2 targets. You're not doing anything with CJ Uzomah, right? On 2 targets, 2 receptions. You guys not starting them next week?
No, I think Tyler Conklin managers are pretty upset right now because those were Tyler Conklin's touchdowns.
Yeah.
I have like a soft spot in my heart for CJ Uzomah. When all of my tight ends got injured, he delivered me my first dynasty championship. Like, it was because of him. And so whenever I see him do well like this, I immediately am like, oh, we're back, baby. And it's fantasy playoffs time. Like, we're heading into the last couple of weeks, but my heart says yes, but my brain says no. We're leaving CJ Uzomah on the bench. You can't trust him.
Cannot trust him. On the Lions side of this ball, Jared Goff had a pretty decent game. Amon-Ra St. Brown finished the week with 15.2 fantasy points, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 76 yards. Pretty decent game for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And we were worried about him potentially facing Sauce Gardner in this game, and he did fine. Did perfectly fine. DeAndre Swift was the running back to play this week. If you played Detroit Lions running back roulette, he had 9 targets, 5 receptions, which definitely helped boost his numbers. We also had 8 carries, 52 yards, 12.5 fantasy points. Jamal Williams was pretty disappointing. He got 13 carries, but only 33 yards and 3.3 fantasy points. Simon, Jamal Williams, who's been pretty decent throughout the season. Are you confident starting him the next 2 weeks, especially during fantasy playoffs time? Even if he's getting the majority of the carries here, does this dissuade you at all?
Does it dissuade me at all? Not particularly, especially with the upcoming matchups being the Panthers and the Bears over the next 2 weeks. They're very beatable defenses, especially at the running back position. And Jamal Williams, he didn't fall in the end zone this week. He didn't get his touchdown, but he's a touchdown monster. And I don't expect that role to change for him. So next week, hopefully he falls into the end zone once or twice, and you're pretty happy with that. But man, disappointing. It sucks. After he probably helped you get to this point if he's on your team. Hopefully he's not the reason you're going home here in the playoffs.
Right. What about you, Joey?
Yeah, the matchups coming up the next 2 weeks, I like from a lot, especially that Bears matchup in week 17. I think a lot of fantasy championships are going to be won and lost in that one game right there. We also got the Bills and the Bengals that night, I believe. Yeah, but I'm fine with Jamal Williams. We just need Amon-Ra St. Brown to fall down at the 1 yard line so we can get some of those touchdown runs Simon was talking about. And I don't even think this is like a two-headed monster in a negative way. I think they can both feed. We've seen it happen earlier in the season where Swift and Williams were both getting work and they both got good, solid fantasy production. So I think we can definitely see that going forth.
It's a positive two-headed monster.
Yeah.
It's the best kind of two-headed monster.
It's like Sully, like a two-headed Sully. Like you just like want to hug it. Like you're excited to see it.
From Monsters Inc. Is that what we're talking here? Oh, man.
Nice. Solid reference.
If I saw, like, I feel like most people in costumes I can avoid getting excited about. Like you see like a Mickey Mouse or a Hercules or a Spider-Man. A Sully costume gets me every time. I will run to see them.
I will send you a picture of when my daughter we met Sully at Hollywood Studios, and Sully went down to hug her and it looks like he's about to eat her head. And she's so excited. She's like, ah, but he is like the most lovable, huggable character at Disney.
Joe, you're just going to completely ignore Jeff Smith.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore
the fantasy relevant wide receiver that we all expected from today.
Yes, Jeff Smith III, I believe.
Whenever they said his name, I was like, excuse me?
That sounds like a fake made up name.
It sounds like the husband of the mom that Zach Wilson's hanging out with. So he threw him some passes to make up for what he'd been doing.
Jeff Smith.
But he did a little bit today. Guys, we're going to move on to our next game here. The Panthers-Steelers game. The Panthers tried to mount a late comeback in this one, but couldn't quite pull it off. Steelers coming away with the victory in this one, 24-16. Kenny Pickett was out with his concussion. Mitch Trubisky filling in for him, went 17 for 22, 179 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown or an interception, but looked pretty milky out there. Milky Trubilky. It was just totally fine. JL, do you think Mitchell Trubisky has any hope of holding on to this job, or is he just a milky fill-in while Kenny Pickett's injured?
He's a disgusting, milky substitute. Yeah, no, I think Kenny Pickett is their future, is what they're looking towards. There's not really a competition here. They knew what Mitch Trubisky was, and that's what we got this game. This is peak Milky Trubilky.
He's a milky boy.
He is a milky boy.
Najee Harris was the focal point of this offense this week. 24 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. Good for 14.6 PPR fantasy points. Joey, with their matchups coming up against the Raiders and the Ravens, Najee has been disappointing so far this season, but we're in the fantasy playoffs and he just got 24 carries. Are you trusting Najee Harris as a starter in these last 2 weeks of the fantasy season?
I am next week against the Raiders. When we come into that game against Baltimore, I'm pretty nervous. But going next week against the Raiders, yeah, we saw what Ramondre did today, and he wasn't apparently even fully healthy. So I'm excited for Najee next week for sure.
John Luke, you on the Najee train as well with Joey here? Are you a little more hesitant?
I've been on this Najee chain. Najee chain. There we go. What was the ones we had this morning, Joe? We had a whole bunch going.
Zay Zones.
Isaiah Pizzico and Zay Zones. Yeah, no, Najee Harris. He's getting the carries, right? That is the beauty of Najee Harris, and he's looking a little bit better out there. Still running behind that poor offensive line, but yeah, next two matchups, I'm very positive for him.
I think you can plug him in. He's never been an efficient runner, but he's back to getting the volume that makes him a great fantasy running back.
He does have Baltimore week 17, and last time I played against Baltimore, he wasn't very efficient. He had 12 attempts, 33 yards, 1 touchdown, but not very efficient with his carries there.
No. Chris in here saying, "Hooday, what up, Chris? Hooday. Welcome, man. A nice win." And Albert in here with the Freiermuth with a big goose egg. Yeah, Pat F., who has been killing it as of recently. You thought he was in that top tier, maybe you could trust him week in, week out. Lays a goose egg for you. Joey, do you think this is due to Mitchell Trubisky being the starter? Maybe he doesn't have the chemistry with him that Pickett does?
I think it's a bad game. I think that Trubisky, the way he succeeds, I mentioned it this morning, is with his tight ends. The best season he had was the year that he leaned on Trey Burton. So I'm just kind of wondering what Milky Trubilky fill-in's trying to do out here. Because he did win the game today, so maybe I should be quiet and not criticize him anymore. But I don't understand what's going on with Freiermuth
against Carolina
in this game. Yeah, against Carolina. What did they say?
No, I'm just saying. Yeah, they won, but it was against Carolina.
No, like true. Carolina hasn't been hot recently.
You mean the contending team in the NFC South after the Buccaneers lost another game today? Those Carolina Panthers? Yeah.
You're right. Who day?
Yeah. Who day?
I was talking to a Falcons fan this week, and I was like, man, rough season. He's like, we're only one game back, right? And I was like, oh my God. Like, you can still just sneak into the playoffs. Like, they started Desmond Ridder. They gave up on Mariota, but they could still find their way in, backdoor their way into that wild card round.
I'm just expecting the Saints to get it, but at this point, surprise
Andy
everyone.
Dalton, the playoff superstar. He never won a playoff game, right? On the receiving side for Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson, 10 targets, 10 receptions, 98 receiving yards. He was the dude to play this week. But my question for you is, with 10 targets this week, is he the wide receiver to start going forward in these playoffs if you're picking one player? And does Pickett coming back change that? Like, if Pickett's back in there, do you prefer Pickens over Johnson, or is it still the DJ show?
I think it's still the DJ show. 10 targets to Pickens 5. I mean, Deontay Johnson is leading this team in targets. I pull up his numbers here, his target share numbers, but it's definitely him as the 1, and then Pickens as the 2.
There's been a bunch of times this year that I've said, okay, now we're seeing it. The shift it's George Pickens, that Pickett and Pickens connection. It's great, but the problem is Deontay Johnson just keeps popping up. So I would just lean on Deontay Johnson because we've seen it more from him in the past, and I can't get a good read on if Pickens is going to run away with this job, and maybe he's just not going to.
Yeah, on the season, Deontay Johnson's target share is 27% compared to George Pickens' 14.9%. And then if you just take the last 3 games into account, which is going to tell you the most recent trend, Deontay Johnson is 37.2% of this target share, while George Pickens has 11.5%. So it is not close, and it's not going in the right direction.
Shout out Deontay Johnson. I'm with you guys.
Deontay Johnson.
He's the one to start. George Pickens is exciting. I get it. But he's another one of these rookies where I'm very curious to see where him and Deontay Johnson get drafted next year. Deontay Johnson likely should be drafted first, but with the way people get excited, especially about these second-year wide receivers, I wouldn't be shocked to see them in like that back-to-back range, kind of like we see Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and maybe even Pickens getting that hype and being drafted ahead of him going into next season. Would not shock me at all. On the other side of the ball, Sam Darnold coming in 14 for 23, 225 yards, 1 touchdown through the air. It's Sam Darnold. You're not starting him. Maybe in a super flex league, you're throwing him in as your QB2, but not much going on there at the quarterback position. And then these running backs who looked like we could maybe start trusting them, right? Deonta Foreman killed it for a couple weeks. And then Chuba Hubbard came forward and had some great weeks for fantasy as well. And then this week, we get Chuba Hubbard with 4 carries for 10 yards, Deonta Foreman with 10 carries for 9 yards. Joey, what are we doing with these Panthers running backs? Can you start either one of them going forward?
Man, I'm extremely frustrated because Deonta Foreman was someone I was really excited about. At home, when they're competing, Deonta Foreman has been showing up. 100 yards in the last 3 home games. Deonta Foreman's had 100 yards, scrimmage yards. And so today, 10 carries
for 9 yards? 10 for 9? 10 for 9.
It shocks me.
Less yards than carries.
Yeah, he is in a way. No, he doesn't have negative yards per carry.
One of his carries was for 5 yards. So he had 1 carry for 5 yards and then 9 carries for 4 yards.
Maybe he had the Tommy Trembles. I don't know what's going on with him, but just extremely disappointed in him today. Expected so much more out of him.
Rough.
Yeah, man, you guys were going hard on Deonta Foreman this morning.
Yep, it was like my one big whiff of the week. I had other few whiffs, but not as bad as that one. I had him like running back like 26. I have to look, but enough to where I was telling people to start him.
I haven't checked since we got on here, but if Mike Williams doesn't start doing something soon, then that is a mega whiff for me this week. Just whiff beyond all whiffs. I was so hyped on him. I was plugging him in everywhere.
I was sweating there for a while because a colleague of mine asked me if they should start T. Higgins or Jerick McKinnon this week. And I was like, I'm going to lean T. Higgins, but Jerick McKinnon could be good. If you're worried about T. Higgins stuff, like lean Jerick McKinnon. And then I just watched as Jerick McKinnon got score after score. I was like, oh no, I gave him bad advice.
I think he got saved though, because Higgins had a good day.
Higgins ended up having a good game, but it was looking scary there for a minute.
Yeah.
That's the thing with wide receivers. With running backs, I feel like you don't often get that like just last 3 minutes fantasy push where everything is saved, right? But with a wide receiver, it can just happen. Like, don't get me wrong, Josh Jacobs with that 76-yard touchdown run the other day, that's a way a running back can do it. But you see it with wide receivers way more often where nothing. Then at the very end, plus 13 fantasy points, you're happy. You're good to go. Now, the receivers here in Carolina, you're not getting that from them very often. But you had a decent game from DJ Moore. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 73 yards. Is DJ Moore the only startable Carolina Panthers fantasy player, JL?
No. I think Deonta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard are startable.
You think they're startable? Joey, what about you? You've been high on them, but this was not pretty this week between these two backs.
Yeah.
Joey dropped him.
I dropped DJ Moore for Elijah Moore when Mike White was still starting. Because we've seen what was happening with Elijah Moore with Mike White the previous 2 weeks. And I don't know when to start DJ Moore. Like, this was the matchup to start him because Pittsburgh's pass defense is so bad, but we've seen bad pass defenses, and DJ Moore just put up almost a couple goose eggs and then just not good fantasy production. I don't know when to start him, so I put him on the waiver wire. I did. And I'll tell you what, someone's going to go pick him up next week, and he'll probably crap the bed next week.
Against Detroit?
Oh God, they're playing Detroit. You know what? He probably will, because that's when you'll expect him to show up, and he won't. But it's a Sam Darnold problem. It's not a GMR problem.
Joey, I love that you did that, though, because that is – I never have the balls to do it, but it's one of my favorite strategies that people do in the playoffs, the waiver wire bombs. The name that shouldn't be on the waiver wire, but you don't like starting them. Like the player that you think has a bad schedule, like the top 24, the top 30 guy that you drop as a bomb out there on the waiver wire for someone else to step on, right? For someone else to plug into their lineup. And DJ Moore, I don't blame you for throwing him out there for someone else to throw into their lineup.
Just for reference, if I would have started DJ Moore instead of Zonovan Knight, I would have won my matchup and been headed to the next round of the playoffs. No! Now I have to wait and see if Alan Lazard is going to help me get 13.03 fantasy points. I don't know.
By the way, Simon, our matchup is officially concluded.
Who wins?
I win.
No! Where you at?
In where you at? Our dynasty league, our very first dynasty league. To move on to the championship round.
I was going for back-to-back titles this year.
I know you were
trying to be the first back-to-back champion. I'm the first 2-time champion in that league, but not the first back-to-back champion. JL, take it home now since you took me down. Win that one. Who are you facing in the finals? Tim?
I don't know yet.
We'll see.
Maybe Pat.
Pat? Oh, man. Never mind.
It's Pat or somebody else. I already took Tim out.
I'm cheering for Pat if you're playing
Pat
against
or Milt,
Pat in that one. Guys, we're going to move on to our next game here. The Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints game. The New Orleans Saints coming out on top in this one in Desmond Ritter's first start, 21-18.
Yeah, everyone's favorite quarterback combo. Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill led the Saints to a 21-18 victory over the Atlanta Falcons today. Together in Dalton and Hill combined for 231 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, although neither of them had a singular stat line or usage, which would prove that you could start them in the near future. I guess if Taysom Hill has the tight end eligibility in Yahoo leagues, you can start him there, but I think we've all played that hot potato game and have kind of fallen short with it. So if you want to take the risk and start Taysom Hill in a tight end spot, you can, but I don't think either of these two guys are startable. Do you guys feel that way?
I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
He's no Jeff Driscoll.
Yeah.
No Jeff Driscoll.
I didn't think I was going out on a limb there. But Alvin Kamara continued his good run at home this season as he's now gone over 85 scrimmage yards in 5 of his last 6 games at home. Kamara finished today with 23 total touches and 104 total yards. And this was Kamara's last home game of the season. The next 2 games, he'll be on the road at Cleveland and Philadelphia. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your comfort level starting Kamara heading into your semifinal and championship weeks? Simon, you go first.
Screw you, Kamara. I love you. You are one of my favorite players in the NFL. You're so cool. But I finally gave up on you this season. I finally said the Saints team is bad. They're not featuring you the way that they should. I don't know if it's an Andy Dalton problem, if it's a new coaching staff problem. And then here we go. The last couple of weeks, like you mentioned, Joey, he's been not only startable, but he's been an asset for your fantasy teams. Mm-hmm. Roll him out there. They're competing in this division. They could win this division with this win and with the Bucs loss. And it's going to be Alvin Kamara that does it for him. He's the best player on this team. So I'm plugging him in. That's their path to the playoffs is through Alvin Kamara. And so I'm going to plug him into my lineups with pretty high confidence. I'm back in, baby.
Immediately brought back in. Partially. I feel partially the same way. I do think they're going to ride Alvin Kamara to try and get a playoff spot here. But their next two matchups here, they got Cleveland, which is a great matchup. So I'm rolling them out there next week. And they got Philadelphia, which is a less good matchup in Philadelphia. I'm still probably rolling him out there because if you drafted Alvin Kamara, you probably need to start him. But I'm going to be a little hesitant in week 17 for sure.
Philly's not as bad of a matchup against the running back as
it's not. But they're a good defense. They're good overall defense.
Yeah. If you can beat Philadelphia one way, it's running against them. Some teams have tried and they've succeeded with that. So
shout out Commanders.
There you go. Juwan Johnson, standout receiving option in this game. 4 receptions, 67 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he's actually available in roughly 63% of fantasy leagues when I went and checked today. So he might be a great waiver ad if you're streaming tight end. And I know everyone.
It's a great call this morning, Joey, because you had propped him up this morning for sure.
Yeah, his usage with Dalton has been really, really good this year. He's gotten a lot of he's got a bunch of touchdowns. He had 5 straight games with a touchdown earlier in the season, and then he got injured, and people kind of forgot about him. So if you used your IR spot on Juwan Johnson, congratulations. I did not. I sent him right to the waiver wire, so I was a victim of that. Rashid Shaheed has become the deep threat for the Saints, finishing with 3 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown, which included his highlight reel 68-yard touchdown. And Chris Olave, a decent day in PPR, 3 receptions, 53 yards.
What happened?
You guys have
hoping for more.
What happened? He was like the dude was a target machine earlier in the season. Like a player that was borderline must start with the volume that he was getting, and then we're just not seeing it anymore.
No, and this was a matchup that Steven Johnson was on with us this morning, and JL agreed with us. So we were all really excited for Olave this week. And 3 for 53 is not going to kill your team, but it's probably won't win any championships. Hopefully, he can come through a little better against the Browns and Eagles. On the Falcons side of the ball, Desmond Ridder made his NFL debut and finished with 97 passing yards and 28 rushing yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. That was kind of nice.
Didn't they almost have an interception though? They were like pretty close to picking him off at one point.
Yeah, I didn't see if he did or not. He didn't have one though, right?
Yeah, it's not in the box score, so I think they called it back.
Oh, okay. So it was a penalty. Okay. That was disappointing. 70 of his receiving yards, of his passing yards, went to rookie Drake London. London's had double-digit targets in back-to-back weeks now. In the first 3 weeks of the season, London looked like the standout rookie of the 2022 NFL draft with 25 targets, 214 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Do you think London's getting back on track, or is this just a case of 2 good games? JL, what do you think?
Both. I think both can be true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in his next 2 matches, he's got Baltimore next and Arizona. I think he's a very talented wide receiver. What we haven't seen from them is that their willingness to pass. They just haven't been passing to their star players, their Kyle Pitts, their Drake London. Kyle Pitts before he went out. I think we're starting to see them maybe realize some of that, and then them switching to Desmond Ridder, they have to rely on the pass some. So I think it is trending in the right direction for Drake London.
It's sad that I see 26 pass attempts, and I'm like, oh, they're throwing the ball a little bit more now. like that was my first thought when I saw 26 pass attempts in this game. I was like, okay, maybe there's some hope for these receiving options. But JL, I'm right there with you. My love for Drake London's talent hasn't gone anywhere since the season started. He was my number 1 rookie wide receiver pre-draft, post-draft, and I still think he's got to be in the conversation when we talk most talented rookie wide receivers. It's just on a horrible offense. So even though his talent isn't changing, I'm not sure this is indicative of anything that we can rely on because it's still the Falcons' horrible offense. There's going to be bad games for London because there's going to be bad games for this Falcons offense.
Yeah, agreed. Falcons run game split pretty evenly. If you look at carries, Tyler Algier turned 17 carries into 139 yards and a touchdown. And Cordarrelle Patterson, 14 carries into 52 yards and a touchdown. This is Tyler Allgeier's first 100-yard rushing game of his career. Let's all clap for him because he's watching, so that's nice. Looking ahead, the Falcons play at Baltimore and at home against the Cardinals in the next 2 weeks. I wouldn't trust him in the Baltimore matchup as they are top 5 against fantasy running backs, but against Arizona in your fantasy championship, Allgeier might be a really nice flex play. You guys agree?
Yeah, that's a fun player to beat your opponent with in the fantasy championships. Tyler Allgeier. That's one of those ones where you look cool, right? Like you grabbed him off the waiver wire and he's a pivotal piece of winning you a title. I love plays like that. But you're right, Joey. If he's going to get this volume on this rush first offense and a plus matchup, you can plug him in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you guys.
I'm with you on that front. Nathan in here coming in saying just lost in fantasy by 0.6 because of the Raiders defense on that very last play. Fantasy, you fickle something, whatever.
Pray for a stat correction.
Yes.
That's the next step. Pray for a stat correction. It's not over yet, Nathan. It's probably over, but it's not over.
Have you guys ever had the stat correction win or stat correction loss where it came in and took it from you?
I got a stat correction tie earlier this season.
I remember that where it was with Pat, wasn't it? Where you guys caused the tie. That's bizarre. That's even crazier.
I'm still to this day, I think this is my first tie in fantasy football.
Down to the hundredths place, right? It was a decimal scoring tie with a stat correction. Joe, you've had one. You've had a stat correction steal a victory or give you one?
Lost a playoff game on a stat correction, like my third year playing fantasy. That laptop didn't survive that night. I'll just say that.
You and Tom Brady, it was a Surface Pro.
I needed a new one anyways, and it was just unbelievable.
That is fun. Like when you have something where you're like, I literally can't sell this. And I'm usually not allowed to break it, but I'm getting a new one, so I'm going to break it.
Yeah.
Feels good right there. Nathan, I'm sorry, man. Fantasy sucks, and it's my favorite thing in the entire world. There's nothing I love more than fantasy, and there's nothing that makes me more mad than fantasy football. Because we're going to move on to our next game here, and this was a game that I did not see going this way. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans facing off, going to overtime, but the Chiefs pulling out the W with the Jerick McKinnon touchdown, Joe. You mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, Jerick McKinnon had a day. Yeah, I don't think anyone would have foreseen this game going this way. The Texans now 2 weeks in a row giving really high-end teams a run for their money. But the Chiefs did pull out a victory here, 30-24. Man, I think Jerick McKinnon is probably the first one we got to talk about because if you started him, congrats. Big day for Jerick McKinnon. 10 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown on top of 8 targets, 8 receptions, 70 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He had 34.2 fantasy points this week. My goodness. That's 2 weeks in a row. He's been fantastic. I think they're realizing that Jerick McKinnon is actually a pretty talented player here. Pacheco did have more carries. He had 15 carries, 86 yards, no touchdowns in this game. What are you guys thinking about the usage of this running backs in the Kansas City offense?
The problem is it's predictable if you can predict the game script, right? If you can predict the game script, it's very predictable who's going to get the work. So this week, when the 10-3 Kansas City Chiefs were going up against the 1-11-1 Houston Texans, who have been abysmal against running backs on the ground, it seemed like a slam dunk. They're just going to run it down their throat with their first and second down back, Isaiah Pacheco, and you can roll them out there. They're not going to need to rely on the receiving game as much. They're not going to need to rely on their third down back. Then all of a sudden, this is a game. This is a close game, and that's where Jerick McKinnon comes in and gets that receiving downs work. It's heavily involved in the passing game. And if you thought this game was going to be close, then it's a great Jerick McKinnon start, but I didn't see it coming. I did not expect the game to go this way.
No, I said this morning that I think both of them are startable, but Pacheco is the one I wanted to start. So I agree with you, Simon. Didn't see this come from Jerick McKinnon, but good news for all the McKinnon managers out there. It might be rinse repeat next week because I got Seattle and they're the second worst team against running backs, where Houston was the worst team against running backs. So we might see another performance just like this next week.
Dude, it feels like this is the trap. This is the trap, though. You start him the third week in a row, and you're like, now he's got to do it. And then now they zag.
And see, McKinnon really feels like the back to play next week because Seattle can't put points up, or Houston really we don't expect them to put points up. Oh man, is that the trap?
I benched McKinnon this week for for Greg Dulcich in a tight end premium league in my flex spot. And that couldn't have gone much worse. It hurts pretty bad. And so now I'm trying not to let it cloud my judgment for next week. You know what I mean? Because I do think in a tight end premium league, those players are debatable, which one you should start in that flex spot week in, week out. But I'm going to have to go in with clear eyes and not let this game cloud my judgment, because that was a hot game from Jerick McKinnon.
That was. Tim said, finally, McKinnon is hitting. Every time throughout McKinnon's entire career, Tim has tried to call it.
He's been in on McKinnon for years now. Like, for years. When nobody was in on McKinnon, Tim's like, no, McKinnon's the dude. I know it. He's wait.
The guy.
Just wait.
And Albert's saying Pacheco was in the doghouse for a bit after he fumbled. Yeah, but he's still got the majority of the carries here, so I can understand going Pacheco over McKinnon in a lot of leagues. Moving on to the receivers in this game, predictably, Travis Kelce led the Chiefs in receiving here, 10 targets, 10 receptions for 105 yards, 23.5 fantasy points. He had a good game. I don't know if you guys saw when he drew an unnecessary roughness flag. Did you guys see that?
When he got in the fight?
Yeah.
I just
was watching that like, yo, what are you doing, Travis Kelce? Like, literally, the guy's not even touching you, and you're just mad, like coming up and trying to fight him. It was just ridiculous.
I feel like that was a turning point for that offense, though, because they were having trouble clicking, and then Kelce went like all alpha male.
Yeah.
And the team seemed to light a fire under their butts.
Their butts.
Sometimes they're like, we got to start winning so Kelce doesn't get ejected from this game, is what they thought right there. Like, we better score. Kelce's going to get kicked out of this game.
Sometimes you need someone to get out there and show their butts
just to get it going, heat it up a little bit.
That's why I always show my butt just in case.
Mm-hmm. Just in case. Yep. Especially at the airport in front of TSA.
Especially at the airport.
Juju Smith-Schuster was the main wide receiver on this team, which is good. It's again what we'd hope here. 10 receptions, 10 targets, 88 yards, 17.8 fantasy points. And Marquez Valdes-Scantling did not have a bad day. 3 receptions, 5 targets, 26 yards, and a touchdown, giving him 11.6 fantasy points. Are you confident starting both of these guys week in, week out, and the next 2 weeks for most people, the last 2 weeks for most people's fantasy leagues? What do you guys think?
I feel better with Juju, which I think is understandable to say. If I have to start MVS, I will. I think what you got out of him today is a good game. You should be happy to get this out of him. I don't think he can give you much better than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
what about you, Simon?
The problem is they've got really tough matchups against wide receivers the next 2 weeks with the Seahawks and the Broncos. It's not a bad schedule for their running backs. Broncos a tough defense all around, but the Broncos are giving up the fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Seahawks giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. I'm trusting Juju out of the two. I think you can start Juju. He's the top receiver on this team. I'm going to be a little hesitant with MVS as the secondary receiving option, a really tertiary receiving option with Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster both ahead of him going into these tough matchups in the fantasy playoffs, your championship week. I can't do it. I can't roll him out there against the Broncos or the Seahawks.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Sky Moore, I don't even think got a target this game, but he's there. You got Kadarius Toney coming back. Justin Watson. There's a bunch of options there.
Jeff Smith.
There's
no Jeff Smith.
His dad.
I think Jeff Smith's allowed to just play on any team, any week. I think they just let him.
He wants.
Yeah, he can just show up and step out on the field.
All-time quarterback.
Speaking of Jeffs, Jeff Driscoll played in this game.
He did.
That's probably all you have to talk about. Didn't play much. Davis Mills was the main quarterback on the Houston Texans here. Pretty decent game for him for fantasy. 20.34 points. Just fantastic. He had 12 completions, 24 attempts, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game, including a rushing touchdown, which of course gave him
that
a
helps.
boost. Yeah, boost. He had 5 carries, 25 yards. Davis Mills, the rushing quarterback. Outside of Davis Mills on the running side of the Texans here, Royce Freeman, Simon's man.
I'm man. You're man. Oh, no, I did love Royce Freeman.
You love Royce Freeman.
I was so in on Royce
11
Freeman when
carries,
he got drafted.
51 yards. He didn't get drafted, right? Was he undrafted?
Philip Lindsay was the undrafted back.
That's who I'm thinking of. You right. Oh, yeah. Royce Freeman was the next Alvin Kamara, who I've completely bid on. Damn it. Who was the Rex Burkhead didn't get any carries in this game. He came up a bit in some of the questions this morning. Daria Gumbawale was the backup running back, but Neither him nor Royce Freeman really did much in this game. Davis Mills was the kind of just stole any sort of relevance here.
Yeah, Dario was so close to being a hero at the end of the game, was just inches away. And I don't know if you watch the replay, I think Dario Ngumbawale might have had possession of that fumble and was downed before it was ripped away. I know a Chiefs player ended with the ball, but I think you watch that. I think there's a very real argument that the Texans recovered that and he was down with the ball. He was almost the hero. It was so close.
Story of Darie's life. Almost the hero.
Ngumbawale.
This Texan team has a wonderful running back. He just was not available to play today. So
that's true. Damian Pierce, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Jordan Akins. I never know.
Akins.
I think it's Akins. Yeah.
Akins. Okay. Jordan Akins. Jordan Akins. He had a pretty decent game. 3 receptions, 6 targets, and a touchdown. 11.2 fantasy points. Chris Moore, as far as wide receivers go, he was the highest scoring wide receiver, but didn't mean much. 4 receptions, 9 targets, 42 yards, 8.2 fantasy points. Joey, I know you were big on Chris Moore. Are you disappointed with his performance?
No, I mean, it's you. The thing is, you can't expect much out of him, but he's giving you like 9 targets today. It's 8.2 fantasy points. But if you're starting Chris Moore, he's probably a second flex play or maybe a third wide receiver. And I don't think that's extremely disappointing. I would roll him. Who do they have next week? Who do the Texans have next week? Let's take a look.
It's a good question.
I'm going to look right now.
They're playing the Titans next week and then the Jaguars.
I don't want to play him next week. I'll play him against Jaguars for sure. But Titans, nobody passes on the Titans with any consistency. So, yeah, but Chris Moore, 4 for 42. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I'm with Joey. He's not an exciting play, but with Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins not playing, he's the play in the receiving game here for the Houston Texans. So you can plug him in. Maybe he gets a touchdown and then you're happy. He doesn't get a touchdown. You're fine with your 8 to 12 fantasy points and you just call it a day.
Yeah. Once either Nico or Brandon Cooks steps on the field, my hands are kind of coming off of Chris Moore, which we established this morning. I'm not allowed to touch the players.
Not anymore.
When did that change?
It's a long story.
Did you get a letter?
Not only did I get a letter, but every time I get in line to get an autograph now, there's a little sign that goes up. It says, Joey.
Don't do it, Joey.
Don't do it.
There's two lines. There's like the line on the floor where most people are allowed to stand to get their autograph. And then there's a second line 4 feet further back.
For Joey.
The Joey line.
All joking aside, and real quick, the first time I met Ric Flair, he had a sign in front of him that said, I will not woo. I'm not making that up. He did it at the end for everybody, but like, because everybody wants him to go, woo. He had a sign that says, I will not woo. The first time I met Ric Flair.
That's awesome.
That was my mom, so that was funny.
Whenever I saw Offspring in concert, the whole time I was just sitting there waiting for them to play Pretty Fly for a White Guy, right? And then during the middle of their set, they said, we are not playing Pretty Fly for a White Guy because we effing hate that song. And then they just kept going on with the rest of their set. They hate that song. Like they wrote it. It wasn't a song that they liked. And then it's their biggest song of all time. I think it's funny when they do things like that. Guys, let's move on to our next game here. Okay. And what a game this was. Woo! The Jacksonville Jaguars beating the Dallas Cowboys 40-34 in overtime. And there's a lot to talk about on both sides of the ball here, but I got to start with Trevor Lawrence. 27 for 42, 318 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had an interception as well. But guys, I think we are in the middle of witnessing the Trevor Lawrence full breakout, what we expected him to be. And if you think back to like how some of these young quarterbacks have progressed, Josh Allen, this is around when, like the middle of his second year, his breakout started happening. You started seeing those flashes. And Trevor Lawrence, his first entire season was under Urban Meyer. They finally got him some receiving weapons this year, and Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, and he's going to have Calvin Ridley coming back next year. Trevor Lawrence is sneaking into those like top 8, top 9 fantasy quarterbacks. He's going up that far. John Luke, with the performances Trevor Lawrence has had since week 10, it seems like something in that London game turned it on. He said, I never want to feel that way again after that game. And he's looked great since then. What's your confidence level starting Trevor Lawrence in weeks 16 and 17?
Confidence level is wildly high. He's got the Jets, which is the best matchup. And then he's got Houston Texans, which is a fantastic matchup. The amount of times he's throwing though is wild. The last 2 weeks he threw 42 times each of those 2 weeks, and then 31 the week before, 37 times the week before that. So since the bye, he has been averaging like high 30s passing attempts each game, which is exactly what you want out of your quarterback. That's more opportunities for him to score fantasy points each of those throws. So yeah, my confidence is very high.
Joey, going into next season, where does Trevor Lawrence rank for you? Is he
I'm
top
so
10
glad
guy?
you asked this question. We were talking about this morning as it relates to Kyler Murray. Like, what players are you taking above Kyler Murray? I'm taking Trevor Lawrence above Kyler Murray. He's a top 10 quarterback for me next year. We started seeing the shift in the middle of the season, and it was kind of quiet. And I was like, man, please just keep this going. Let's keep it under the radar. But it's not. The secret's out. Trevor Lawrence is the real deal. I'm not taking him above Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields, but I mean, confidently taking him, after Mahomes, before Russell Wilson. So I said like top 10 quarterback.
So ahead of that next tier, like the Kirk Cousins, the Jared Goffs, the Derek Carrs, the Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely. You look at the names like Jalen Hurts, no, but Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, no, Burrow, but he's right in that level when you start getting to Dak Prescott, like Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence. That's around the range I'm talking about.
That's tough. I think I roll T-Law, especially with Calvin Ridley coming back next year. Like Calvin Ridley coming onto this team. He's been killing it with Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. You add a true wide receiver 1 on this offense. Man, I'm very excited for Trevor Lawrence.
What about Deshaun Watson?
Trevor Lawrence, based on what we've seen right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, that's right behind Tua and Justin Fields. So he'd be QB 8 for me after the names I just ran through. And sounds like would be for you as well. He looks fantastic.
The game seems to be slowing down for him a little bit finally. The game seems to be slowing down. He's getting the ball out of his hands quicker. He's making his reads a little bit quicker. And this is something, when you're looking at quarterbacks that come out of Clemson and some of these other schools, especially like the powerhouse schools and like the Big 12 and the ACC, a lot of these teams run offenses where it's just power man-to-man. They just rely on their athletes being better than the athletes on the defensive side of the ball. And whenever you're throwing to the ball, the likes of Mike Williams, Amari Rodgers, in the ACC going up against Boston College, Wake Forest, generally your receivers are better. And T. Higgins, Trevor Lawrence didn't have to read defenses in college. It is a simple offense that Clemson runs, and it's here's our superstar wide receivers. Get them the ball, Trevor. He didn't have to go through his reads like that. So it took time to develop, and we're seeing it now. Excited to see him killing it. JL, I know you were happy to see a big game from Travis Etienne, 19 carries, 103 yards. It was your Christmas wish that he would be the number 1 running back down the stretch of the season over here. A little bit involved in the receiving game as well. 3 targets, 2 receptions, 24 yards. Is Travis Etienne a top 10 back going into these last 2 weeks?
I don't think so. He hasn't been top 10 since week 9, week 10 time frame. I don't think that he is a top 10 running back. I think he's an RB2.
Do you think it's because this team has started throwing the ball more? Like you said, they've been chucking the ball over the last couple of weeks.
I think that's part of it. He's dealing with some injury throughout that time, which definitely contributed to this. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just the way they're using him, and he just hasn't broken off a lot of big plays from what we've seen. I don't know exactly what the reason for that is, but he's got the Jets next week and then Houston. I'd be probably starting him in both of these games. But yeah, I think we have to temper our expectations a bit,
which is disappointing.
Yeah, just the touchdowns haven't been there, really. I think is one of the biggest things.
Yeah. Well, today, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joey.
I was going to say, I think if you average his next 2 weeks after this one, I think the Houston game, he could have a massive game. So I think he could average into a top 10 running back. I was wrong on him this morning. I was saying, like, just temper your expectations with him because this Dallas Cowboys defense is rock solid. And the Jaguars came out and they, poked holes in it. And Etienne was one out there poking holes. It was a little boop, boop.
With his hole poker. Yeah. They did score points, 40 of them in this game, 74 points scored all around in this game.
I love high-scoring games.
The touchdowns were not going his way, and I think that's because Zay Jones was hogging all of them. 3 touchdowns, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 109 yards. And shout out to both of you guys this morning. You guys were high on Zay Jones going into this game, and it worked out. Even against a tough Dallas secondary, Zay Jones killing it.
Yeah. My friend Travis, he's in the cast of Wicked, sent me a message while I was on the show this morning saying, should I still play Elijah Moore over Zay Jones? And I said, no, put Zay Jones in. Mike White's not starting. Because earlier in the week, I told him Elijah Moore over Zay Jones. So I'm really glad that I made that switch mid-show. And then he texted me after the first touchdown. Hey, man, you're right on. Thanks so much. And then it was a joy to be texting him to the next 2 touchdowns. So
yeah, I was going to say, then the second and third, he was like, oh my God, thank you so much.
I sent him the link. Hopefully Travis was watching. So
yeah. John Luke, do you think this is, 3 touchdowns is not repeatable? I say that. We were saying that with Christian Watson for 5 weeks in a row that he couldn't keep doing it. But 3 touchdowns is not expected, I should say. Are you plugging Zay Jones in confidently in your semifinals and finals matchups?
Yeah. Who do they have?
New York and Houston.
New York and Houston. Yeah, absolutely. I'm plugging him in. Zay Jones on the season, 21.8% target share. That's right underneath Christian Kirk's 23.8%. So it's really closer to a 1A, 1B type of situation. Over the last 3 games, Zay Jones overtook Christian Kirk here, 23.3% compared to Christian Kirk's 21.6% target share. So, I mean, they're neck and neck. It's splitting hairs, but he's absolutely worth starting the next 2 weeks.
I wonder if go ahead, Simon.
I was just going to say, it's kind of wild, this Jaguars offense. Like we were just talking about the Panthers, and it was like DJ Moore, maybe Deonta Foreman, maybe. And now this Jaguars offense, I think week in, week out, you can start Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. And I don't even mind, like, you can start Marvin Jones. He has big games. And if they're chucking the ball 40 times a game, he can go in that flex spot. This Jaguars team is good for fantasy. It's a good for fantasy team.
Are they eliminated from playoff contention, or can they still win the NFC South? I think they can still win the South.
I don't think they're eliminated yet. I think there's 2 teams currently fully eliminated, right? This week probably added a couple more, but going into this week, there weren't very many that were officially eliminated.
The Colts and the Titans. Did the Titans lose, or did they end up beating the Chargers?
I did not see the final score of that game.
Yeah, they're not. Jaguars are not eliminated. 538. I can't tell if it's updated or not, but still giving them 44% chance
to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
for the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, that's a pretty high % chance for this Jaguars team.
Chargers beat Tennessee today, so man, I hope the Jaguars get in. It's my wife's favorite team.
On the other side of the ball here, guys, the big question all week and every week this season when they're playing is Tony Pollard or Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard or Ezekiel Elliott.
I'm so sick of talking about that.
I know, but we got to talk about it for a second. Tony Pollard out-carried and out-targeted Ezekiel Elliott. But Elliott got the touchdown and scored more fantasy points. 15.1 PPR fantasy points compared to Pollard's 14.6 PPR fantasy points. Joey, do you have a preference between these two whenever you're starting one of them? And do you think you can start both of them with any level of confidence?
I'm going to cheat because I think it's the only correct answer to this. In standard, I'll start Ezekiel Elliott. In PPR, I'll start Tony Pollard. That's honestly how I feel about them, because I feel it is, we talked about a 1A, 1B situation with another backfield here recently, but this really is a 1A, 1B for me. Jerry Jones is never going to quit on Zeke. He's just not going to do it.
Eventually,
no matter. I honestly, I don't know. I don't know how many red pots Ezekiel Elliott will have to jump into. So we'll see.
Jerry Jones or Zeke?
Oh yeah, I was wondering. Eventually, we all will die.
Hopefully,
everyone out there in FanDuel land. We are all sad reality.
We are all mortal and insignificant, and one day we all die.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the fan club coming in with Curtis Samuel or Alan Lazard. Please and thank you.
Joey, I'm going to throw this one to you first because I know you need some Alan Lazard points. But are you rolling Alan Lazard, or would you rather have Curtis Samuel in your lineup?
I would rather roll with Alan Lazard. He has Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback against a Rams team that looks like they just have given up. They don't look the same. And I think Aaron Rodgers wants to make a statement. Yeah, it's hard.
I think I'm rolling Lazard here as well. What about you, John Luke?
Yeah, I'm with you guys in the Lazard train.
I need 14 points out of Lazard, so let's go.
And I see Siobhan in here. Maybe this is the same exact league you're talking about, Joey, saying if Lazard doesn't score 14 points tomorrow night in my PPR league, for some guy, I might have to mail the fantasy football trophy in my possession to Italy.
Are you in Italy, Joe?
Spending big bucks at FedEx?
No. So this is my best friend in the entire world that called into the morning show this morning. But yeah, if I don't get 14 points, our one of our best friends' dads lives in Italy and he's in the league, and we'd have to mail it to him in Italy.
Oh
so
man,
Shervon's cheering for you to avoid the shipping charges.
Yeah, apparently he's won 3 times and he never lets me forget it. So
wait, so why does Shervon need to mail it if you lose? Oh, because he has it.
He has it.
He won the last
year.
one.
Yeah,
okay, I see.
Year.
I gotcha. Whenever he said, "Am I spending big bucks at FedEx?"
Because he'd be shipping it to Italy.
But my immediate thought was, "Why are you going to FedEx Field? Like, what does that have to do? You gonna stop Curtis Samuel?"
Well, my thought was, how many packing peanuts can you even buy? Like, is it possible to spend big bucks at FedEx besides on shipping? Like, can you go into the FedEx store and just go wild on bubble mailers? Like, oh, we are rolling in bubble mailers.
Just drop a bag full of like 10K. Be like,
you
give me
walk
all
out,
you got.
You walk out with envelopes and you just start throwing them on everyone in the parking lot, like stacks of cash.
That's hilarious.
I would like 12 flat rate shipping boxes. I would like to pay for all the flat rate shipping, but I'm just going to stick them inside another box.
Man, I hate shipping things. Every time I go to ship something, I get so confused. Do I put the tape on now? Do I put the tape on there? Do I have to pay for this before I put my things in it? And then 80% of the time I put it in the wrong box. Have to pay for that as they just put it in a different box altogether.
Classic. I believe when Shervon beat me in the playoffs the very first year, I flat rate shipped him a photo. Like I went to Walgreens, printed out of me giving him the finger, and I shipped it to him like same day delivery.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Guys, on the receiving side of the ball for Dallas, Noah Brown out-targeted CeeDee Lamb. 9 targets, 6 receptions, 49 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But CeeDee Lamb got it done through the yardage. 7 receptions off 7 targets, 126 yards. We're all starting CeeDee Lamb. Like, CeeDee Lamb's in your lineup every single week. So I don't even know if that needs to be.
I'm not starting CeeDee Lamb.
You're not starting CeeDee Lamb, Jay?
No, but only because I don't have him. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go.
But he's not on any of my teams.
If you have Noah Brown, Joey, after this game, he out-targeted. He was the most heavily targeted player on this team this week. Are you plugging Noah Brown in your lineups?
No, and here's why. Because, yes, he had 6 receptions for 45 yards and 2 touchdowns, but there's one thing that this doesn't show, and that's a very costly fumble. And I'm wondering if Noah Brown gets a little bit of a punishment, not punishment because they don't actually punish players, but yeah, they kind of do. And the Dallas kind of doesn't look his way a little bit because fumbling that costly of a ball at the end of a game, that's not good.
No, and coaches handle it differently, right? Like some coaches see that and then they put the player right back in next play, like give them the ball to show like, look, you can make up for it. And some coaches say, well, in the doghouse, you're not getting targets for 2 weeks. Yeah. Just throw them on the bench.
Just leave them at the stadium. Find your own way home.
Jail, how do you feel about Noah Brown? Do you think he's startable?
Probably not. I think Michael Gallup is still the wide receiver 2 there, despite 2 decent target weeks from Noah Brown. I still think Gallup's going to command the bigger target share.
I mean, Gallup only 2 targets this week, 1 reception for 2 yards. Joey, do you think Michael Gallup can be trusted in any sense for fantasy?
I'm not a very trustworthy person to begin with. I'm not trusting him. If I'm
You're not trustworthy? We can't trust you?
No, not at all. No, not at all. As soon as Nickelodeon calls, I'm out the door, guys. Just to let you know. Oh, no, I'm kidding. I would never leave you guys. No, but Gallup, calls. I just don't see it. What'd you say?
Nickelodeon calls. I mean,
I probably will.
Who could blame you?
I try to broker a relationship.
They got Arnold.
Yeah, Doug.
Arnold, yeah. Doug.
Arnold, Doug.
I would like one evening with Patty Mayonnaise. That's my terms. Yeah. Sir, she's a cartoon. Not in my world.
Another thing to add on to not trusting Noah Brown is the next 2 weeks, they have Philadelphia and then Tennessee.
Yikes.
Both very good pass defenses.
Yeah, some of the best in the league, right?
Some of the best.
Some of the worst teams to start your wide receivers against. I'm with you guys. But this game, I know we're talking about the individual players, about the fantasy aspects, but this game is why I love football. This 40-34 Jaguars over a Super Bowl favorite, like one of the favorites for the Super Bowl. They win in overtime. Like, this is fun. This is just fun. This game is why I watch every game every week. It's why I turn the TV on and don't look away, because you don't want to miss things like this.
Dang, that was beautiful.
What a week. What a week of football, boys.
Football,
and we still got a couple more. Yeah. We still got a couple more. This is shaping up to be an exciting playoffs, I feel like. It's wide open for the taking right here, and I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
Yeah.
Guys, That's going to be it for us this evening. I want to thank everybody who came in and hung out with us, getting ready for this Commanders Giants Sunday night showdown. John Luke, any words of wisdom before we depart on this Sunday night?
Don't boil your pasta, folks.
And Joey?
Never trust a fart.
And don't boil your farts. Guys, that's going to be it for us this Sunday night. We will see everyone next week, same time, same place. But until then, enjoy your football. Good luck in your matchups and go get those W's.
Yep.
See you on another time.
Bye-bye,
everybody.